I used to think that love meant sacrifice, that if I gave enough time, energy, dreams, someone would finally see me, cherish me. So I gave. I gave until I was empty, until my silence became the soundtrack of his comfort. He'd come home late, toss his keys on the counter, and not even look at me. When I asked how his day was, he'd grunt, "Don't start with your neediness." If I cried, I was too emotional. If I spoke up, I was ungrateful. "You wouldn't survive a day without me," he once laughed, sipping the coffee I woke up early to make. And for a long time, I believed him. I believed that being ignored was normal, that my dreams were optional, that my exhaustion was the cost of being needed. I wore burnout like a badge of honor, while he treated my kindness like currency, spending it freely, never offering a single drop of respect in return. But one night, standing alone in the kitchen, while his voice echoed from the other room, mocking me on a call with his friends, "She's lucky I put up with her," something in me cracked, not shattered, cracked open. Because for the first time I saw him not as my partner, but as my parasite. And I saw myself. Tired, yes, but not weak, not anymore. Hi, I'm Elena, and this is the day I stopped begging to be loved and started remembering who I was before I forgot myself for him. It was 11:47 p.m. when my husband's text buzzed through. "Landed safely. Long meetings tomorrow. Love you." I stared at the screen a few seconds longer than necessary. Something about it, maybe the way "love you" felt more like a habit than a sentiment, rubbed me the wrong way. It wasn't the first time he'd gone on one of these so-called business trips, but lately the distance didn't feel just physical. It felt like a wall being built brick by brick between us. And that night, something inside me whispered, he was lying. I used to be the kind of wife who never questioned, who took everything at face value, who believed that trust was unconditional. But that kind of trust had a price, and I was about to learn just how much it could cost me. For 12 years, Daniel had been my everything. We met in college. He was charming, ambitious, the type of man who could walk into a room and make you feel like he saw only you. He swept me off my feet. We married young, built a life together, bought a house, got a dog, talked about kids. I supported him through law school while I worked 2 jobs. I thought we were building something sacred, something real, but something changed. The trips became more frequent. The late-night calls turned into quick check-ins. The intimacy faded like a photograph left in the sun. I tried to talk to him. I asked if everything was okay. He always said the same thing. "Work is just crazy right now. We'll take a vacation. Soon, I promise." And I believed him, because believing the lie was easier than confronting the truth. Until that night. That night, the seed of suspicion bloomed into full-blown paranoia. I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing his voice in my head, but not in the comforting way I used to. Instead, it felt like echoes of a ghost I no longer recognized. So I did something I never thought I would. I opened his laptop. He had left it open on the kitchen counter, and I told myself I was only going to check his itinerary just to ease my mind. But what I found shook me to my core. There were 2 flight confirmations, one under his name and one under her name. I didn't recognize it at first. Chloe Matthews. But the email thread made it painfully clear. Romantic dinner reservations, a couple's massage at a 5-star hotel, even a shared calendar titled Our Getaway. It wasn't a business trip. It was a lover's retreat. I stared at the screen until the edges of my vision blurred. My hands trembled. My heart raced, not from love, but from rage, disbelief, and something even deeper, betrayal. I felt like a fool. All those years. All the sacrifices. The nights I stayed up late, waiting for him to come home. The anniversaries I planned. The job offers I turned down to support his dreams. I had given him everything, my loyalty, my time, my love. And this was how he repaid. Me? No apology. No confession. Just a carefully curated lie wrapped in an airline confirmation. I wanted to scream, to throw the laptop across the room, to call him and demand the truth. But instead, I did something else. I booked a flight. Same destination, same dates, but he wouldn't see me coming. I wasn't sure what I'd find when I got there. I didn't know if I'd confront him, expose him, or just watch from a distance. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. Not this time. Because sometimes, when the world you've built is burned to the ground, there's only one thing left to do. Rise from the ashes, and make damn sure they know you're not the same woman anymore. The moment my plane touched down, my stomach twisted into knots. I wasn't nervous. I was livid, the kind of fury that settles in your bones when you've been played for a fool. Daniel had no idea I was coming. He thought he was in paradise, whining and dining the woman he'd been sneaking around with. And I was about to catch him in the act. I checked into a small hotel just a few blocks from the luxury resort where they were staying. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. It would take patience, precision. I couldn't blow this, because once the truth came out, I wanted it to burn everything he'd built on lies. That night, I walked the halls of their hotel with a scarf around my head and sunglasses covering half my face. I felt ridiculous, but there was no room for pride. I followed their room number from the confirmation email he'd carelessly left open. Room 812. I stood outside for a moment, listening. Laughter. Her voice. His voice. It was real. I didn't barge in. I didn't make a scene. Not yet. This wasn't about drama. It was about control. He had stolen that from me long enough. Now I was going to take it back. For the next 2 days, I followed them discreetly. I watched them hold hands on the beach, kiss over breakfast, share cocktails. By the pool. He was the man I remembered. Romantic, charming, affectionate. But now, those gestures weren't for me. They were for her. Chloe. A woman at least 10 years younger, with a fake laugh and an Instagram influencer look that screamed curated perfection. And yet, he looked at her the same way he used to look at me. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the ease of it. The effortlessness with which he transitioned into another life. Another lie. I realized then that this wasn't just one betrayal. This had been going on for months, maybe longer. Suddenly, the missing money from our joint account made sense. The mystery charges, the random networking events, the cold distance he excused as stress. He wasn't stressed. He was strategic. He'd planned everything, every detail of this little affair, and he probably thought he was smart enough to get away with it. After all, I was just the doting wife back home, the woman who never asked too many questions, the one who kept the house running and made excuses to friends about why he was too busy to show up. And now he was playing house with another woman, pretending to be the perfect partner while I rotted in confusion. But I wasn't confused anymore. What shook me the most wasn't just that he had lied, it was how calculated it all was. This wasn't some accidental fling. He had made a decision to deceive me over and over, to manipulate me with sweet words, while he built a fantasy life elsewhere. The emotional impact hit me like waves, humiliation, anger, grief. I'd loved this man for over a decade. I gave up. Job opportunities to move for his career. I handled our finances, supported his ambitions, and thought we were building something lasting. And all the while, he was laying bricks in another direction, building a future that didn't include me. But that's the thing about betrayal. Once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. The illusion shatters, and what's left is painful, but powerful. It forced me to take a long, hard look at myself and realize I'd lost more than just trust. I had lost me. The woman I used to be, bold, passionate, driven, had been buried under the weight of compromise. And for what? A man who couldn't even be bothered to tell the truth? No. That's when I made the decision. This wouldn't end with quiet heartbreak. I wasn't going to disappear into the background like some discarded chapter in his story. He thought he was in control, but he had no idea who he was dealing with. He thought I would crumble, but I was just getting started. When someone you love betrays you, it's not just the relationship that breaks, it's your foundation. Every memory becomes a question mark. Every kind word feels like a knife in disguise. But more than anything, the future you envisioned begins to crumble before your eyes. In those quiet moments alone in my hotel room, I thought about what this betrayal really meant, not just for me, but for the life I had given up to be by Daniel's side. I had pressed pause on my career more times than I could count. I had taken on the emotional labor, the logistics, the calendar, the dog sitter, the in-laws. I had done it all so he could shine, so he could chase promotions and titles and stand in front of people looking successful. But behind every one of his wins was a woman holding the scaffolding together. That woman was me, and he was throwing me away for someone who didn't know the first thing about what it took to build that life. Someone who never stayed up late, balancing the bills or sacrificed a weekend to help him study for the bar. Someone who didn't see him through his panic attacks, who wasn't there when he lost his first case and fell into a depression. I was the one who stayed, the one who carried the weight. And now I was supposed to just disappear? It wasn't just my heart he broke. It was the life we'd built, the plans we'd made, the family we talked about starting. I couldn't look at our home without thinking about the conversations we had on the porch, dreaming up baby names, planning renovations, joking about getting old together. That future was gone. And I realized something even darker. He hadn't just cheated on me. He had robbed me of time, of choices, of stability. I had trusted him with my life, and he turned around and made me feel like I was disposable. I thought about the mortgage, still in both our names. I thought about the joint savings we'd been growing for the right time to start IVF. I thought about how he smiled at me just a week ago and said, "We'll figure it out, we're a team." A team. The audacity, the cruelty. I couldn't let this slide, not just for me, but for every woman who's ever been blindsided like this. For every wife who held a man up while he climbed higher, only to be kicked off the ladder the second he saw a shinier version of life. This mattered because I mattered. This mattered because I refused to let him rewrite the narrative that I was some bitter ex who couldn't handle change. No, I was the woman who made his life possible, and he thought he could discard me like yesterday's news. He was about to learn otherwise. This betrayal wasn't going to end in silence. I wasn't going to let him walk away with his reputation intact, with his finances untouched, with his freedom to keep lying to people who didn't know better. He had built his life on the illusion of integrity, and I had the power to shatter that illusion, piece by piece. There are moments in life when you either break or you sharpen. I chose the latter. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. It was about balance. He had taken too much, lied too freely, lived too easily, while I held the weight of our world together with trembling hands. And now, I was done trembling. I was going to take my life back and make sure he felt the loss of me in every corner of the empire he built on deceit. He thought this was a fling. He had no idea it was the beginning of his undoing. By the time I flew home, I was no longer the woman who had wept on a hotel bathroom floor. Something had shifted. The pain was still there, yes, but it was refined, hardened, turned into fuel. I wasn't going to waste another second crying over a man who lied with a smile and cheated with precision. I was going to dismantle the life he thought he controlled, one thread at a time. The first thing I did was take stock. Emotionally, yes, but more importantly, logistically. Betrayal hurts, but it also exposes, and Daniel's arrogance had made him sloppy. I knew he thought I was oblivious, that I would sit quietly, waiting for him to return home with cheap hotel soap in his suitcase and another lie on his lips. But he underestimated the one thing about me that always set me apart. I remember everything. Every password he casually shared. Every account we set up together. Every detail about his work, his habits, his blind spots. I started with the joint bank account. I downloaded 6 months' worth of statements and marked every expense that didn't line up. There were dozens. Spa appointments he claimed were client gifts. Plane tickets under fake travel aliases. One hotel charge repeated 3 times. On weekends he told me he was working late. Next, I accessed the shared cloud storage. It was synced to his phone. He never thought twice about it. And that was his mistake. I found selfies he didn't. Realize backed up automatically. Him and Chloe, on balconies, in bed, at dinners where he told me he was too exhausted to talk on the phone. I forwarded every file to a private folder I named Insurance. Because that's what it was. I wasn't going to act impulsively. I was going to build a case, not just an emotional one, but a legal one. Then came the business angle. Daniel had always prided himself on his reputation at the firm. Image was everything to him, more than money, more than love, more than truth. And he had recently made partner. It came with perks, a raise, a bigger office, and a morals clause buried in the contract that he probably never imagined would come back to haunt him. But I had it, because I was the one who proofread it for him when he was too busy to read the fine print. And the firm? Let's just say they were very clear about outside affairs that could bring negative PR. So I made a plan, a 3-phase approach. Phase 1. Protect myself. I met with a lawyer, a discreet, sharp woman who specialized in high-asset divorces. I came with files, receipts, and dates. She smiled halfway through reviewing my folder and said, "You've done half my job for me." We filed for divorce quietly. I had her add a request for spousal support and a claim to half of all shared assets, including the house and retirement accounts. My lawyer advised me not to confront him yet. "Let him feel safe," she said. "People make more mistakes when they think they've gotten away with something." So I did exactly that. I played the part. Phase 2. Surveillance. I installed a new security camera system at the house, ostensibly for safety, but really to monitor his comings and goings. I took screenshots of text messages he'd sent me during trips, cross-referenced with flight logs, credit card usage, and yes, even Chloe's social media. She posted everything, a match to his shirt, to the restaurant, to the date. She was the breadcrumb trail he never even had to drop. Phase 3. Leverage. This was the part that would hurt the most, for him. I wasn't going to scream or beg or plead, no. When I exposed him, it would be surgical. Public, yes, but precise. I'd send the evidence to his firm, to Chloe's employer if necessary. I'd destroy his carefully crafted image, not with a tantrum, but with facts. Let him feel what it's like to lose what he took for granted. This wasn't about vengeance for vengeance's sake. This was about reminding him, and everyone else, that some women aren't victims. We're the reckoning. Once the plan was set in motion, I knew there was no turning back. This wasn't a fantasy or a dramatic monologue. It was real life, real decisions, real consequences. And I had to be methodical. Because if I wanted justice, not just revenge, it had to be airtight. Step 1. Document everything. Emotionally, I was a wreck some days, but strategically, I was sharper than I'd ever been. I kept a daily log of Daniel's movements. When he left, when he came back, what he said, and how it didn't line up with the digital evidence I was quietly collecting. Every email he sent, every calendar invite from work, every transaction on our joint cards, I screenshotted and saved. My lawyer encouraged me to build a trail of deception, not just to prove infidelity, but to prove intent. That mattered in court. It wasn't just about cheating. It was about calculated dishonesty and financial misconduct. Step 2. Secure. My finances. He didn't know it yet, but I had opened a new bank account in my name only. I moved a portion of my personal savings and salary into it, quietly. I also froze our joint credit cards so he couldn't rack up more expenses while I was still legally responsible. Then, I requested a full credit report on both of us. That's when I discovered something that made my blood run cold. He'd taken out a personal loan 6 months ago for $25,000, and I never saw a dime of it. Guess who had co-signed? Me. That loan funded a vacation I never went on, dinners I never ate, and gifts I never received, but now I had documentation and a motive. My lawyer nearly laughed when I showed her. "He just handed us the hammer," she said. Step 3. Social leverage. This wasn't just about court or custody of accounts, it was about his image. Daniel lived and breathed reputation. He curated his life so carefully, both online and off. His LinkedIn profile read like a fairy tale: loving husband, community volunteer, ethical lawyer. So, I curated my own narrative. I didn't post anything accusatory, no vague quotes or emotional rants, just quiet, strategic clarity. A photo of me having coffee with my attorney, a tagged location at a women's empowerment event, smiling, composed. Let him wonder. I also reached out to mutual friends, not to gossip, but to plant seeds. I'm going through some things, I'd say, but I'm focused on protecting my peace. That line worked like wildfire. Friends started putting things together on their own. One even confessed, I always thought something felt off about how often he traveled. Word spread fast, without me saying a thing. Step 4. Gather character witnesses. This wasn't a custody battle, but my lawyer said it was smart to get ahead of any possible smear campaign, so I reached out to people who knew me, truly knew me. Old colleagues, friends, even his mother, who had once confided in me that she didn't trust Chloe's energy. I've seen you keep that boy together when he was falling apart, she told me. He's making a huge mistake. I didn't need her to take sides, I just needed the truth. And that's what I was collecting, piece by piece. Step 5. Control the timing. This is what most people forget in situations like this. Power isn't just about evidence, it's about timing. If I had confronted him too early, he would have had time to spin the narrative, play the victim, hide assets, scrub files, prepare, but he wasn't prepared. So when the divorce papers were served, on the Monday morning he returned from his business trip, he looked stunned. And when he opened the envelope, he found more than just legal paperwork. He found a neatly compiled dossier of receipts, screenshots, and a personal note. I know everything. You don't get to rewrite this story. I already have. The same day, I emailed his firm's HR director with a formal letter attaching selected evidence that violated his morality clause. I didn't scream. I didn't call Chloe. I didn't need to. I let the truth speak for itself. By the end of that week, his world started to crumble. When the final confrontation came, it wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. It was surgical. Daniel came home that evening looking dazed, like a man who'd finally realized the ground beneath him wasn't as stable as he thought. I was in the kitchen, calm, collected, dressed like I was going somewhere important. Because I was. Forward. He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. I don't want to hear another lie, I said. We're past that. He froze, holding the envelope of divorce papers in one hand, the printed file folder in the other. His mouth twitched, caught somewhere between denial and panic. He looked around, maybe searching for some sense of the old power he used to hold over me. But it was gone. I told him what I knew, all of it. The hotel, the fake receipts, the photos on the cloud, the loan, Chloe. The trip to Miami, he claimed, was for a conference that never existed. His face drained of color. I can explain, he stammered. I'm sure you'll have the chance, I said. Just not to me. Maybe to your partners. Maybe to your lawyer. That's when I handed him the second envelope, the one addressed to his firm. Already sent, of course. But I wanted him to see it. To feel it. I gave you everything. I said, my voice steady but full of conviction. I sacrificed so much to help you build your career, to support your dreams, and you gave me lies. You made me your fool. He looked down at the folder, shaking his head. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, I cut in. Repeatedly, with intention, with planning. You don't get to hide behind, I didn't mean to. You don't get to be the victim. And in that moment, I watched his face contort, not with regret, but with fear. Because for the first time, he realized he had lost control. The firm put him on leave within 48 hours, officially pending internal review. Unofficially, they didn't want a scandal, and Chloe? She posted one of those cryptic Instagram stories, just a black screen and the word, betrayed. I didn't even need to say a word. Everything I set in motion began to unravel his carefully curated life. The house, I kept it. With the lawyer's help, I proved my financial and emotional investment over the years far outweighed his contributions. The court sided with me. The joint assets split, but not in his favor. his hidden expenses, the loan, and his moral clause. Breach worked against him. He walked away with far less than he expected. The best part? The moral victory. He had to watch as I rebuilt myself, not in bitterness, but in brilliance. I returned to work, poured myself into my career again. I joined a local support group for women who'd gone through betrayal, and I spoke openly about what happened, not to shame him, but to empower others. And for the first time, people saw me, not as Daniel's wife, not as the woman in the background, but as someone with her own strength, her own voice, her own story. I had been broken. I had been blindsided. But I had rebuilt myself. And Daniel? He lost everything he thought would make him happy. Chloe left. The firm replaced him. His reputation took a hit he couldn't polish away. That's karma. That's justice. And me? I didn't just survive, I rose. Because when you've given your whole heart to someone who treats it like nothing, the greatest revenge isn't screaming or lashing out. It's thriving. It's making sure they remember what they lost every time they hear your name spoken with respect. It's walking away with your dignity intact and letting the truth do what truth always does: expose, uproot, and heal. I don't regret following him to that hotel. I don't regret uncovering the truth. Because in that moment, I thought I was witnessing the end. But it was really the beginning of me.